I welcome you all to the second part of the video on thermodynamics. In this video, we shall discuss the remaining concepts. So let us see what is Carnot theorem. It's a statement and proof. Carnot theorem is actually a rule, and in principle it specifies the limits on the maximum efficiency that any heat engine can obtain. The efficiency of a Carnot engine depends mainly on the temperatures of the hot and cold reservoir. It states that all heat engines working between two heat reservoirs are less efficient than a Carnot heat engine operating between the same reservoirs. The maximum efficiency is the ratio of the temperature difference between the reservoirs and the temperature of the hot reservoir expressed in the equation. Efficiency eta is given by 1 minus Tc by Th. Tc is the temperature of the cold reservoir and Th is the temperature of the hot reservoir, where the efficiency eta is the ratio of work done by the engine to the heat drawn out of the hot reservoir. So Carnot theorem is actually a consequence of second law of thermodynamics. Second law of thermodynamics we already discussed in the previous video. So let us see how to prove this. The proof of Carnot theorem is not a direct proof, but it is a proof by contradiction. So consider the adjacent figure which shows two heat engines operating between two reservoirs of different temperatures. So one is a irreversible engine and another one is a reversible engine. So both the engines are working between the two temperatures. Hot source is at a temperature T1, whereas the cold reservoir is at a temperature T2. So both are working, and let us see their values. These pair of engines receives no outside energy and operates mainly on the energy released when heat is transferred from hot to into the cold reservoir. So whenever both the engines are working, so whatever the heat they draw from the hot reservoir, and a part of the heat they convert into work, and then remaining heat they transfer to the cold sink. And whereas on the other side, reversible engine also works in the same fashion. So let us consider their values. The irreversible engine will draw Q1 amount of heat from the source and it will reject Q2 amount of heat to the sink. So obviously the work is difference between those two heat values. On the other hand, reversible engine also will work in the same fashion. Q1 dash is the amount of heat drawn and Q2 dash is the heat rejected to the sink. Difference between those two is the work done. So in the form of equations I have given these values. Irreversible heat engine takes heat Q1 and rejects heat Q2 and does the work W. Then W is equal to Q1 minus Q2. In the same fashion, reversible engine will have an equation like this. W dash is equal to Q1 dash minus Q2 dash. So now we are just going to make the arrangements in such a way that both the engines are so adjusted that they produce equal amount of work. So irreversible engine will work in the forward direction, reversible engine will work in the reverse direction, and they are coupled so that work generated by the irreversible engine is actually equal to the work required by the reversible engine. So work is given to this, work is generated by this. Both are made equal. So if that is the case, then both the engines work done is same. W is equal to W dash. In the form of equation, if you write Q1 minus Q2 must be equal to Q1 dash minus Q2 dash. So this is the first equation. Now we are going to make an assumption that one of the engine is more efficient than the other engine. So I am going to assume that irreversible engine is more efficient than the reversible engine. It means it is more efficient. It means it will generate more work, whereas a reversible engine is less efficient, so it will take less work. That is the meaning of that. So that is the case. So efficiency of irreversible engine is greater than efficiency of reversible engine. So W by Q1 must be greater than W dash by Q1 dash. And by comparing these equations, we can show that Q1 dash must be greater than Q1. It means whatever the amount drawn by the first engine must be greater in comparison to whatever the energy transferred. Sorry, I am telling the wrong. Whatever the heat drawn by the engine, irreversible engine, Q1 should be lesser than the heat rejected back to the source by the reversible engine. That is, Q1 dash is greater than Q1. So that is the inference we get from this assumption. The assumption is irreversible engine is more efficient than reversible engine. And if you put this equation and compare equation number 1 and 2, so we get the conclusion that Q2 dash also found to be greater than Q2. It means amount of heat rejected by the irreversible engine Q2 is less than the amount of heat drawn by the reversible engine from the sink. Q2 dash is greater than Q2. So that's what we get. So you may get confused here to understand how these equations are working. So let us understand by assuming some values for this. So for example, I am going to take, let the reversible engine draws Q1, that is 10 joules of energy from the heat value from the source, and rejects 4 joules to the sink. So what will be the work done? So difference between these two, Q1 minus Q2 is 10 joules minus 4 joules, that is equal to 6 joules of work is generated by the irreversible engine. Now let us take the reversible engine. Say it will reject 12 joules of heat to the source, because Q1 dash is greater than Q1. So since Q1 is 10 joules, so I am assuming slightly more value for Q1 dash. So it is rejecting 12 joules of heat to the source because of Q1 dash greater than Q1. Now putting these three values into equation number 1, so that is Q1 minus Q2 is equal to Q1 dash minus Q2 dash. So we can calculate what will be the value of Q2 dash. So if we solve this, we get 6 joules as the answer. It means that Q2 is the amount of heat rejected by the first engine to the sink, that is, we have assumed this as 4 joules, but whereas Q2 dash is found to be 6 joules as per the calculation. It means whatever the energy you are transferring into the sink, we are drawing more heat from the sink by the reversible engine. So 4 joules is rejected here, 6 joules is taken from here. It means 10 joules is taken from the source, 12 joules is transferred to the source again through this reversible engine. It means when you couple these two engines and work together, if you make them to work together without any external support, there will be 2 joules of heat continuously transferred without any effort from the sink to the source. That's the meaning of that. So Q2 dash is greater than Q2. If that is the case, reversible engine is drawing more heat from the sink than the heat transferred to the sink by the irreversible engine. I showed from the example that 2 joules of energy is drawn directly from there with the, some sample values what we have chosen. As a net effect, heat is continuously transferred from sink to the source without any effort. Only 2 engines are working together. No external work is done outside this system. So whatever the work generated by the irreversible engine is transferred to the reversible engine. So by using that work, reversible engine can transfer more heat from sink to the source continuously. So it looks almost like a spontaneous transfer of heat from sink to the source. So this is not possible because it violates the second law of thermodynamics, which says that heat cannot flow from cold reservoir to hot reservoir without any external support. So therefore, since this is not possible, our basic assumption that one of the engine is more efficient than the other engine is wrong. irreversible engine is more efficient than reversible engine is wrong. So therefore, efficiency of an irreversible engine cannot be greater than that of a reversible engine if both engines are operating between the same fixed temperature heat reservoirs. Now let us go to the next topic, that is thermodynamic scale of temperature. Scale of temperature is a way to measure temperature quantitatively. Empirical scales measure the quantity of heat in a system in relation to a fixed parameter. We already know the temperature scales, centigrade scale or Celsius scale and Fahrenheit scale, like that we have already heard about them. Both the Celsius scale and Fahrenheit scale were originally based on the linear expansion of a narrow mercury column within a limited range of temperature, each using different reference points and scale increments. So they are not absolute measures and hence the scales vary. They do not match with each other. Different empirical scales may not be compatible with each other except for small regions of temperature overlap. If an alcohol thermometer and a mercury thermometer have same two fixed points, namely the freezing and boiling point of water, the reading will not agree with each other except at fixed points. In between, their measurements may slightly vary. So in order to solve all these kind of problems, so to define a temperature scale that does not depend on the thermometric property of a substance, Carnot principle can be used since the Carnot engine efficiency does not depend on the working fluid. So it depends only on the source temperature and the sink temperature, and it does not depend on the working substance of the engine. Carnot engine is made up of a working substance, source and a sink maintained at two different temperatures. We have seen that efficiency of the Carnot's engine is independent of the nature of the working substance. Hence, it depends only on the temperatures, say theta 1 and theta 2 are the source and sink temperatures respectively. Since I have just used these theta 1 and theta 2 as the trivial type of temperature measurements, not the absolute scale. We are yet to discuss about that. So, the efficiency of such an engine is given by eta is equal to work done divided by source temperature, that is Q1, or Q1 minus Q2 by Q1, or theta 1 minus theta 2 divided by theta 1. So now let us consider with an example. So now I am going to consider operation of three reversible engines 1, 2 and 3. So engine 1 works between the temperature theta 1 and theta 2. So there is a engine 1. So it will take Q1 amount of heat, it will reject Q2 amount of heat, and it will convert W1 amount of energy into work. So it will generate a work of W1. And the second engine will work between theta 2 and theta 3. It will take Q2 amount of heat and it will reject Q3 amount of heat, and it will generate a work of W2. And we have the third engine which is working between theta 1 and theta 3. Okay, it is working here. So that is engine 3. It will take Q1 amount of heat, it will reject Q3 amount of heat, and it will do a work of W3. So now we'll represent these in the form of equations. Engine 1 absorbs energy Q1 as heat from the reservoir at T1, does the work W1, and rejects energy Q2 as heat to the reservoir T2. And engine 2, in the same fashion, it is working between Q2, T2 and T3 with energy values Q2 and Q3 and work W2. And the third engine working between T1 and T3 as temperatures, it will draw Q1 amount of heat and reject Q3 amount of heat, and it will do a work of W3. So now we will write down the efficiency equations. Eta 1 efficiency of the first engine is given by W1 by Q1, that is equal to 1 minus of Q2 by Q1, or let it is a function of two temperatures T1 and T2, function of T1 and T2. So now if you rewrite this equation for Q1 divided by Q2, here it is Q2 by Q1, so I am going to take the rearrangement of the functions and then a reciprocal. So Q1 by Q2 is equal to some capital F, that is another function of two temperatures, so between which that engine is working. In the same fashion, I can write similar equations for the other two engines also. Efficiency for the second engine is given by eta 2, that is W2 by Q2, that is equal to 1 minus Q3 by Q2, or that is equal to a function of temperature 2 and temperature 3, or Q3 by Q2. If I take the reciprocal here and rearrange the terms, Q2 by Q3 is equal to F of T2 T3, and we shall write similar equation for the third engine also, that is Q1 by Q3 if I consider, that is F is equal to T1 T3, that is equation number 4. Now we'll compare these equations. Since the left hand sides are only energy values, heat energy values, Q1 by Q3 is equal to Q1 by Q2 into Q2 by Q3. You can write an equation like this because they are only numerical values, so we can have an equation like this. Or if you rearrange this, Q1 by Q2 can be written as Q1 by Q3 divided by Q2 by Q3, because they are all numbers only, the energy values. Now if we replace the corresponding heat ratios with their heat functions, some functions, so okay, Q1 by Q3, Q2 by Q3, Q1 by Q2, we have functions here. I am going to write down them. Q1 by Q2 is nothing but F of T1 T2, so I will just write it down here, and Q1 by Q3 is F of T1 T3, and Q2 by Q3 is F of T2 T3. So we have another equation, but these are functions actually, they are not just numerical values. Since T3 does not appear on the left side, we have T3 on the right side, whereas on the left side we have only T1 and T2. So T3 should be cancelled out. If you want to cancel it out, so this is possible if the function f can be written as, I am going to rewrite the equation in another fashion. Say function of temperature T1 and T2 can be written as phi of T1 and psi of T2. I am just going to separate them into two terms. Okay, it is a function of another two functions like this. So this one is a function of temperature 1, this one is a function of temperature T2. In the same fashion, f of T1 and T3 can be written as phi of T1 and psi of T3, and f of T2 T3 can be written as phi of T2 and psi of T3. So now I am going to replace these three terms with their another rewritten format of the functions, and let us cancel out now. So equation 5 becomes, so f of T1 T2, so instead of that phi of T1 and psi of T2 I will write down. So f of T1 and T2, sorry T3, so phi of T1 and psi of T3, it is not clearly visible, it is actually T3, and f of T2 and T3 can be written as phi of T2 and psi of T3. So now if you cancel out psi of T3, psi of T3, and if you compare these equations, so we can see that psi of T2 is actually equal to reciprocal of reciprocal of phi of T2. So they are reciprocally related to each other, so they are inversely equal like that. So you can write the equation like this: Q1 by Q2, if that is the ratio of the heat values are there, and that we wrote it earlier as it's a function of f of T1 and T2, and that could be written as phi of T1 divided by phi of T2. So first temperature goes to the numerator, second temperature goes to the denominator. In the same fashion, you can rewrite the other terms also, okay, and then you can simplify and you can show that this function phi of T1 and phi of T2, so you can represent these as their absolute scale of value, absolute values represented in the thermodynamic scale of temperature. So you can have several functional relations like this. I just told, I've given only one example here. You can write down for the other two equations also, and you can simplify them. So you can have several function relations that will satisfy these kind of equations. So for a thermodynamic scale of temperature, so Kelvin, what he did was he chosen a relation like this: Q1 by Q2, if it is the ratio of energy values, that must be also equal to the ratio of this phi of T1 and phi of T2. Instead of that, he simply wrote T1 and T2. They are actually the absolute values of the temperatures on Kelvin scale. So that is the ratio of energy absorbed to the energy rejected by a reversible engine is equal to the ratio of temperatures of the source and the sink. So this equation is found to be valid, and this equation can be used to determine the temperature of any reservoir by operating the reversible engine between that reservoir and another easily reproducible reservoir and by measuring the efficiency. So if you want to measure the temperature of any unknown reservoir, so you can take a reversible engine and one known reservoir, and you can run the engine between the known reservoir and the unknown reservoir by noting the efficiency values, and you can calculate what is the temperature of the unknown reservoir. So it will give the absolute temperature of that reservoir. The temperature of easily reproducible thermal reservoir can be arbitrarily assigned a numerical value. So just like in other trivial scales, the triple point of water and value was assigned around 273.16 Kelvin. So this can be taken as an example for absolute scale also. So efficiency of a Carnot engine operating between two thermal reservoirs, the temperatures of which are measured on the thermodynamic scale, is given by in terms of its efficiency. Eta 1 is equal to, in terms of energy, equation looks like this, but at the same time Q2 by Q1 can be written as T2 by T1. So you can replace them by their temperatures on absolute scale of temperature. Efficiency of Carnot engine using an ideal gas as working medium, and the temperature measured on ideal gas temperature scale is also given by a similar expression. So now let us move on to the next concept, that is Clausius-Clapeyron equation. So we are going to consider two isothermals. Consider two isothermals as shown in the figure: ABCD, that is A to B, C and D, and EFGH, that is E, F, G and then H. These are two isothermals, and these isothermals are actually drawn when a substance is undergoing a phase transition. Let the substance is purely in one phase in the region AB and GH. Here is AB and here it is GH. So in this part, in this region, the substance is in one phase, and substance is purely in another phase in CD and EF. CD and EF, that's the region. So in this region, so substance is in another phase. BC and FG, BC and FG, this region, this particular middle region is actually the region where the substance is undergoing phase transformation. So you can take any example such as ice to water phase transition or water to water vapor phase transition. So if you consider the first one, say for example ice water, you can say in this part it is purely ice, in this part it is purely water. So in the middle part you can say ice is getting converted into water in the forward direction. If you go in the reverse, so water is getting frozen into ice. Here it is melting, it is freezing here, like that. So now let us join the points BG and CF. B and G are joined, CF is also joined. So it will give a closed cycle. So now the isothermals are reversible. The loop BCFG, B, C, F and G. BCFG is a closed loop. It is nothing but a Carnot cycle, and the efficiency of Carnot engine is given by, so if you assume certain values of heat as well as some temperature values, say during melting of ice, Q1 amount of heat is utilized there. During freezing of water into ice, Q2 amount of heat is involved there. The first melting is taking place at the temperature of T1, freezing is taking place at a temperature of T2. So then you can write down an efficiency equation for this Carnot cycle. So it looks like eta is equal to Q1 minus Q2 by Q1, that's equal to T1 minus T2 divided by T1. So let us rewrite the equation once again. Q1 minus Q2 by Q1, that's equal to T1 minus T2 divided by T1. So now since we are involved in phase transitions, so amount of heat utilized in undergoing a phase transition, we generally call them as latent heat, and I am going to assign the latent heat values for these kind of phase transitions. So let Q2 is equal to L. Q2 is actually the heat involved in the freezing of water into ice, if you take that example. So amount of heat involved in freezing is Q2, that is equal to L. So if that is the case, for the melting Q1, that is actually a higher value, so let it be L plus DL. L plus some extra energy is also involved. So L plus DL I am going to take for Q1. And for temperatures also, during freezing, if you take T2 is the temperature involved, let it be simply T here. And for melting, we have T1 as the temperature. So I will take a slightly higher temperature because T1 is greater than T2 as per the Carnot cycle requirement. So T plus dt is actually the temperature. So now we go for the some mathematical equations. So equation 1, if you recall and substitute these values over there. So Q1 in place of Q1, so it will be L plus DL. So substitute L plus DL. And in place of Q2, we have L. So substitute L. So L plus DL minus L divided by Q1. So that is L. And then on the other side, we have T plus dt minus T by T. So if you simplify this, dl by L is equal to dt by T. So you may have a doubt that why you are not written L plus dl here and T plus dt here for Q1 and T1 values, but the dl and dt values are negligibly small, so we can neglect in the denominator. So we can get the equation as dl by L, that is equal to dt by T. Now we can have from the Carnot cycle, work done is given by Q1 minus Q2. So Q1 is L plus dl, Q2 is L. So L plus dl minus L is equal to dl. From the diagram, we can also find out the work done. So that is the area covered by the Carnot cycle, that is given by dp into V2 minus V1. So these are the values. dl is nothing but dp minus V2 minus V1. So you can put this value of dl into this equation, okay, here. So if you substitute, so we get in place of dl, dp into V2 minus V1 divided by L, that is equal to dt by T. So dp by dt is equal to L divided by T into V2 minus V1. So this is actually the required equation, and this equation is known as Clausius-Clapeyron equation. So now let us see some applications of this equation. So its application on melting point as the first case. So we have the equation dp by dt is equal to L divided by T into V2 minus V1. Now for the case 1, so if upon melting of a solid, if a solid is getting converted into a liquid or some other phase, so solid is melting, final volume of the substance is more than its initial volume. So V2 is the final volume, V1 is the initial volume. If V2 is greater than V1, so V2 minus V1 will be greater than 1. So then if V2 minus V1 is greater than 1, so V2 minus V1 is positive. So then whole right hand side is positive. So dp is proportional to dt. dt if you cross multiply, it comes here some positive value multiplied by dt. So dp is proportional to dt. So in that case, with an increase in the pressure, melting point also rises. If you increase the pressure, melting point also rises, and if you decrease the pressure, melting point also decreases. So it is following the direct relation. So example is melting of metals. Metals also follow the same behavior. Now let us take the second case. If upon melting of a solid, final volume of the substance is less than its initial volume, V2 is smaller, V1 is larger, so then V2 minus V1 will be less than 1. So in that case, dP is proportional to minus of dt, because V2 minus V1 is a smaller quantity, it may be negative value also. In that case, their proportionality is in the opposite. Okay, so with an increase in the pressure, melting point decreases, or if you decrease the pressure, melting point increases. So melting of ice will follow this kind of property. So now let us see the application of this equation on boiling point. So any liquid material or solid material is converted into vapor phase due to either sublimation or boiling. Okay, so boiling of a liquid substance into vapor phase, the final volume of the substance is almost all the cases, it is found to be more than its initial volume. So V2 is always found to be greater than V1, so it is always greater than 1. So in that case, dP is proportional to dt. So it means with an increase in pressure, boiling point also rises, and vice versa. So example is sublimation of the camphor, or boiling water. So inside pressure cooker is another best example for this case. So this completes your almost all the topics of the chapter thermodynamics. Thank you.